Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We're going back to the days of disco tonight, and we're going to be telling stories, believe it or not, about Batman's secret creator. And I'm going to tie those stories together. But joining me tonight is Lisa Borders. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I live in Massachusetts, although I grew up in New Jersey in Springsteen country, so very appropriate for the podcast. I am a writer. I'm primarily a novelist and a humorist. My humor, I've written a number of pieces for McSweeney's for folks who are familiar with that. In fact, I think that's how you and I connected initially, Jesse.
Yeah.
And I have two published novels, and my third novel is coming out in, I think it's a little less than 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Last Night at the Disco, which I'm really excited about. It's different from my other novels. It's a lot funnier, but it's also, I would say the title is a little bit misleading because it's actually about a lot more than disco. It's really about that time period in the late 70s in New York City where there was just this nexus of different forms of music happening at the same time. So you had disco, you had the beginning of punk rock, it was the waning days of glam rock. There were just a lot of different musical genres happening at that time. I was just a little bit too young to enjoy it, but I was aware that it was happening.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because I have a lot of questions, but I always like to start at the beginning, Lisa. So you already said you grew up in Jersey. What part of Jersey and what kind of music was your family listening to?
Yeah, so I actually have lived in two different parts of New Jersey. It's such a small state. I'm sure being in Texas, you wouldn't think there'd be that many different parts to such a tiny little state. But we lived in Central Jersey when I was a kid, which is basically Springsteen country. And then when I was starting high school, we moved down to South Jersey, which is like the Alabama of New Jersey. It's
Okay.
it's rural, it's much more conservative. It's 2 hours south in the same state, but it feels very different. And so I feel like even though I was always in New Jersey growing up, I experienced two really different kinds of things. My family, so I'm on the Gen X boomer cusp. So I was born in the
Okay.
early 60s. And my parents were older than most of my friends' parents. They were like World War II generation. But I had an older half brother who was 15 years older than me. And he is the one who introduced me to music because my parents didn't really listen to a lot of music and they didn't know what to make of. They didn't hate rock and roll, they didn't have anything against it. They just didn't really care for it. But my brother got me into the Beatles pretty early. I remember when I was like 4 or 5 telling people that Strawberry Fields Forever was my favorite song. And he got me into a lot of things that I think I would not have heard on my own. But I think that so Springsteen came across my radar in high school, and I was a sophomore when Darkness on the Edge of Town came out. And then I went back and got the earlier albums. But I feel like he was the first artist that I discovered on my own. It wasn't like music that my brother had introduced me to, it was something I had discovered myself.
Lisa, that's a little unusual because usually, if you're a younger sibling, often, and it does sound like they're a big influence in your musical life, they're teaching you. Can you remember that? Was there a road to Damascus moment with finding Bruce? And can you articulate why he spoke to you?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I can remember hearing Born to Run on the radio when I was like maybe 12. And I thought it was interesting. I wasn't sure I was still listening to a lot of stuff that was a bit poppier at that time, but
Sure.
my taste was starting to change. And so I would hear things like when I was that age, 12, I bought Queen's A Night at the Opera. It blew my mind because it was just so different than anything I had ever heard
Yeah.
before. So I was starting to like have this interest in bands and sometimes my brother was so much older than me that we weren't even living in the same state, but sometimes I would talk to him and he would be like, "Oh yeah, Queen's a great band." I would bring things up with him. But I liked Born to Run, but it was when Darkness on the Edge of Town came out. So this is back in the days of FM radio where they would play deep cuts from albums. It was, I don't know if you're too young to remember that, but it was wonderful. Like you could hear pretty much an entire album just on the radio. You weren't, I think nowadays most younger people just buy singles anyway, but there were periods of time when it felt like to buy an album you were really taking a risk because you had maybe only heard like one song on the album.
Yeah.
But they were playing, we were in South Jersey then, and we got the Philadelphia radio stations, and they were just playing Darkness on the Edge of Town in heavy rotation. And I think for me, what really drew me to Bruce was the lyrics more than anything else. Obviously, I liked the music too, but I wanted to be a writer. It was my secret desire. And he told stories in his songs in a way that really no one else I had listened to before had. He had characters, they had names, they were all very different. You could tell one character from another. His songs are really like little short stories.
Yeah, and it may have been on McSweeney a few years ago. Some website for April Fools did a fake story that basically was set in an alternate universe where Springsteen was a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. And all his albums, they changed them to novels or collections of short stories,
That's great.
poetry. Yeah, it was just, and I was like, I want to live in that world. Like I want to go visit that world. The So first off, you're very kind, but I'm probably older than you. I graduated high school in 77.
Okay.
So
Just
yeah,
a little bit older, not
yeah,
much.
yeah. So yes, I do remember that I was an AM radio kid. My parents controlled the music, not in a bad way. That's what it is. So once you had an AM radio, clock radio, that's when you could control your own music and listen to that.
Yeah.
So were you a big reader as a kid?
I was very unathletic. That
Okay.
was athletics were the bane of my existence. I was the last person picked on every team. So I think people like us tend to be a little bookish because
Yes.
you're seeking refuge in books and
Yes.
music. And very I was never very interested in sports, even just professional sports, but I think I listened to AM radio the way some people followed sports.
Mhm.
I listened to Kasem's American Top 40. I was like obsessed with what number different songs were. I probably still have some crazy bits of that in my long-term memory somewhere because I just always wanted to know what was number one in 1974. And it was like I looked forward to that countdown all week. Those were like the stats that I followed. It was really important to me.
If we're on a road trip, nothing makes me happier than being on Sirius XM 70s and we catch the beginning of that, where
Yeah.
they on the weekends they will replay those. And just it we because we'll sit there and go, wow, we hadn't heard this song in a while, or wow, I do not like that song, or oh, I love this song. So yes, it was mandatory listening. I got home from church and you went to the bedroom and had the AM radio on and you're just listening to it, and you couldn't wait to hear the stories. And yeah, so I get that.
The
What
long distance dedication.
Yes. What kind of books did you love to read?
Oh gosh, let's see. I read almost anything I could get my hands on. I really liked science fiction a lot as a kid. I still like it, although I think I haven't followed it quite as much as an adult.
Yeah.
But I probably read some science fiction that was too adult for me when I was a kid. Because my reading was not really censored in the way that I think contemporary parents worry about what their kids are reading. The 70s were so different.
Yeah.
It was just, I I would go to the library. I got an adult library card fairly young, and my mom just let me take out whatever. Sometimes she would ask me what the book was about, and sometimes I read a really good book like Jane Eyre, and then sometimes I read a trashy novel where people were having sex on top of piles of money. I can't remember the name of that book, but I remember reading this crazy like potboiler novel. And I was just, I don't think I'm supposed to be reading this, but of course I read the whole thing.
I can going through Harold Robinson and Harold Robbins. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, my dad was in the army, so we moved around a lot. And so I think that's where my love of reading came from,
yeah.
is that a book didn't leave you. You had your best friends and you knew you were going to leave them. And yeah, I did a lot of science fiction too. And I went through spells, right? Where we were there at the American Revolution or in these just books of that I would love reading. And so, yeah, I never really, though, I daydreamed about being a writer the same way you daydream about being a rock star.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I ever realistically thought I could do or had the skill to do. You, though, did you enjoy writing in school? And
I did, but interestingly, I was really discouraged from doing that because my dad died when I was young, but he had been a scientist. And I was good at science during a time period when they were trying to encourage more girls to
sure.
like get involved in science. And because I could do it, I was just pushed along this path. And so I was actually a biology major in college.
Okay.
And about halfway through, I realized this is not what I want to do. Like, I really want to write.
Yeah.
And I think I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, but it was by the time I just realized that initially I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and that was why I was a biology major. But by the time I realized I wasn't going to pursue that, I would have been in school probably for another 4 years if I had tried to change majors. So I
Mhm.
just finished the biology degree. And it's actually come in handy because I work part-time in a hospital lab and then I also teach creative writing. So I get to do both, which is great. But the writing thing, my mom really discouraged only for pragmatic reasons. She just
Sure.
thought it's too hard to make a living. And she was right.
Yeah.
If I was counting on my writing to make a living, I would not have very much money.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a very sort of middle class thing where you don't know anybody else who does this kind of creative profession, and so you think it's a bad idea for your kids to follow it. But I tried being a journalist for a couple of years, and I wasn't really well suited to that. I wasn't great at cultivating sources, or the writing part I liked, but I hated the reporting part and I really wasn't very good at it.
Okay.
I did that for a couple of years and then I got a master's in creative writing. And then I ended up in this sort of duality where I do a little science and a
Okay.
little teaching writing and then write. And it actually works really well for me.
That sounds nice. I always think Penn Jillette talked about growing up there in Massachusetts as well and said the first person he knew in show business was him. Like he just had no idea.
Yeah.
So getting back to Bruce, I always like to preface this question. The amount of times you've seen Bruce perform live is not a barometer of how big of a fan you are, but are you someone who counts? And if so, how many times have you seen him live?
I am not generally someone who counts, but I actually did try to count for the purposes of this podcast because I knew you were going to ask me that.
You did the
And
homework. Thank you.
it is 8 or 9.
Okay.
I'm not completely sure, but
Okay.
it's the first time I saw him was on the River tour.
Okay.
I missed the Darkness tour. I wasn't able to get tickets, but I was a teenager then. But I think I was a freshman in college on the
Mm-hmm.
River tour.
Okay.
And I actually saw him twice on that tour. And I saw him once on the Tunnel of Love tour. I saw him, there was a big Amnesty International concert where he was with Tracy Chapman and Sting and like all these incredible
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel. It was an incredible show. I saw him on that tour. I've seen him several times in Boston and I saw Springsteen on Broadway.
Okay. What were your thoughts as a writer on Broadway?
I loved it. It was the smallest venue I've ever seen him in, which was
Yeah.
amazing because he was already so huge by the time I saw him. I I really loved the way he put the personal stories together with the music. It all, nothing in it was really that surprising to me, just having read his book and having
Yeah.
read so much about him. But I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really terrifically done. Did you see it?
I did. I was lucky enough. The Someone reached out when I said I wasn't going to go and said I can get you a ticket if you want to go. So I went and asked my wife if I could go with the caveat there are certain questions you ask as a spouse that you aren't allowed to say no. Like tomorrow night, this weekend, my wife and son are going out of town. And so her sister's coming over tomorrow. They're going to go shopping for the stuff they have to get. And then she's spending the night. So Linda will say, "Hey, do you care if Mary spends the night?" The correct answer is no. Now, the reality is I don't care, but even if I cared, you can't say no. So I said, "I'm about to ask you a question and you are allowed to say no." And so she said, "No, this if they can get it and we can figure out a way to swing it financially, this sounds like a something that's pretty once in a lifetime." So
Yeah.
yes, and I agree with you. I had read the biography and so nothing was that surprising except I didn't know he would be that funny. I
Yeah.
did not picture the show being that funny. And I was impressed by that, the idea that and how he weaved in stories that for songs I may not have particularly like I'm not a fan of the slow Born in USA version, but it fit perfectly with the way he told the story and
Yeah.
asked. Yeah. So I'm going to turn to some of your writing and I want to get to Last Night at the Disco in a few minutes, Lisa, but we did meet because you wrote, "I'm a Trump loving Springsteen fanatic, and the cognitive dissonance is finally catching up with me."
Yes.
Tell me, this was back in May 2025, so just 4 or 5 months ago. Talk to me where that came from and share a little bit of that. Because at first, I didn't catch that you had written it. I just caught and I started reading it and is this guy for true? Is this? And then once I went, oh, okay, let me reread this. So please share.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those pieces of satire that's so close to reality. I saw that reaction online quite a bit where some people were like, "This guy is just terrible." And then someone would say, "It's satire." So it's actually something I had thought about for a long time because I have known people who claim to be giant Springsteen fans, go to see him all the time, and yet their politics are so completely the opposite of everything in Springsteen's songs and the things that he's saying about humanity and the
Yeah,
country. And what really preceded my writing this piece was when I believe Springsteen did some shows in Europe and I can't remember what exactly something had just happened with Trump, and I can't remember what it was.
yeah,
But Bruce came out and basically talked about what a disgrace Trump was, very honest with the audience. As everything is these days, it was captured by many people's phones and it was
yeah.
shared all over the place. And
And then
it
he
became,
ended up releasing it officially on
yeah.
YouTube and things. Yes,
And I think it was also at a time that not that many entertainers were speaking out against Trump. I think a lot of people were a little afraid to.
sure.
And so he really just said what he thought, which is part of why I love him. And I just kept catching whiffs of these reactions where people were like, I've seen him 35 times, but I'm not going to go see him anymore. And to me, it's if you've seen him 35 times and you don't understand that his politics are the opposite of what's running our country right now, you haven't really been listening to the lyrics.
Yeah.
And so because I've written other pieces for McSweeney's, it's usually, so this particular piece is what's known as a timely piece. And when you
Hmm.
write a timely piece for McSweeney's, you really don't have a lot, like you really have 24 hours at most.
Sure.
And I generally am not that fast a writer, so I have not published that many timely
Yeah.
pieces with them. Mine have usually been things I've been able to work on for a while. But I really just felt, as I said to one of my friends, this moment was made for me to write humor about. And if I can't turn a piece about Springsteen around in 24 hours, then I need to just give it up. And
Hmm.
so I wrote the piece. I was up pretty late that night. I sent it in and they accepted it and ran it the next day, which I was excited about. But I
Yeah.
basically decided to do it in the voice of this kind of character who I had met many people who were similar to. It wasn't based on any one person, but
Yeah.
I've known people over the years who are similar to this guy.
My son is a huge WWE fan, and we often talk about, and it's become shorthand, the WWE Bruce fans,
Mm.
that everything is crap. He hasn't, everything is sucks. It's darkness on the edge of town. And nothing he does. And when they'll talk about how anything new, any of the new wrestlers are horrible and these storylines are horrible and things like that. And yeah, it's ironic or odd. My lovely bride went to breakfast with her best friend and someone they knew from the church this morning. And the person, very pious, very spiritual, just went on a rant about that Trump is everything good for the Catholic Church in this country and that Charlie Kirk is a martyr
Oh boy.
and there's nothing. And it before I got on the podcast with you, Linda was saying, I'm really disturbed. Why does that disturb me so much? We live in Texas.
Yeah.
Everyone loves Trump, right? We are very lonely blueberries in a very strong strawberry patch. And
Yeah.
I said, I think it's the she is a woman of faith. And you know that, and to hear someone that not even acknowledge, yeah, he's a piece of crap, but he's where I want to be on the abortion issue. And so I got to put up with all the rest of it because that's my issue. I've got friends that say, I don't agree with everything he says, but he is the best person I think to support Israel or whatever this is.
Right.
No, this lady he is exactly as if God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit came down and anointed this guy to lead us. And she's just disturbed by it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I understand why she's disturbed because I think it's a lot easier to understand people who are voting on certain issues, but recognizing who he is.
Yeah.
And it does feel like there's some kind of I guess it sounds melodramatic to say brainwashing, but there, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have this image of Trump that does not square with the reality of the things he says and does.
No.
And I don't understand how they can overlook those things. And I don't know if it's partly because we're so siloed in watching different kinds of news so that
Yeah.
they're seeing really positive things about Trump and they're not seeing some of the really terrible things that you and I are seeing.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it is upsetting when you know a person is a good person who wants to do the right thing. And it seems like they're following someone who is a bad person who really is set out on doing terrible things to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. I was raised in the Baptist church. I converted to Catholicism when we were going to get married. I now have a very odd relationship with religion. And when you quote scripture after scripture about take how you treat the least of these is how you treated me.
Yeah.
And they just ignore that when they go get rid of the immigrants, this, cut funding. We don't need this. And you, it doesn't make any sense. It
No,
just doesn't.
it makes even I was raised like a relaxed Catholic. We weren't super
Yeah.
Catholic, but like we went to church a couple times a year. But anyone that has even just a rudimentary knowledge of Jesus's teachings
Yeah.
would understand that it's the exact opposite of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I don't, Jesus would be horrified the things people are saying and doing in his name.
Yes, I absolutely think so. All right. Last night at the disco. So talk to me about where the idea came from this and give me your elevator pitch. You're at the book selling and you're pitching the novel.
Okay. I'll start with the little elevator pitch and then I'll talk to you a
Okay.
little bit about what made me want to write it. So in 1977, New Jersey junior high school teacher who spends her weekends at Studio 54, so she lives a double life, discovers two musicians who eventually become among the most influential rock artists of the 1980s. Decades later, having burned bridges with both of them, she sets out to tell her story in the hopes of setting the record straight, according to her, and finding, basically making a place for herself in rock and roll history. So, my main character and narrator of the novel is a narcissist. She is called out for this several times in the book. She has a very skewed perspective on what has actually happened and what is
So
happening.
if I can interrupt,
Yeah,
that was my question. Is she an unreliable
she
narrator?
is.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
She's
what I
she's un
felt like it.
Yeah, she's unreliable. I will say there are degrees of unreliable
Yeah.
narrators, and she's not making up things that happened. Like she is actually telling you what happened, but her take on it and her spin on it is what's unreliable.
Okay.
And I think the trick with a character and a narrator like that, what I tried to do in this book was to write it in a way that the reader can surmise what's probably really happening.
Right.
That you recognize that she's out there a bit and she's got her own take. Everything she thinks is about her. She thinks she's the center of everything. And I do play that for laughs at different points in the book because she tries to have a lot of false humility. And it's pretty funny because she's like the least humble person that you could find.
Yeah, there is a sports station here in Dallas, and they do a lot of what we call guy talk, and they will say they're starring in their own movie. These
Yeah,
characters, they are starring in their own movie. That
yeah.
they don't need to worry about other people because they're the star in what they do. So I'm fascinated because I just finished a couple of weeks ago. I rewatched a movie, Batman and Bill and Batman, I think. And it is the story of Bill Finger, who co-created Batman. In fact, he designed the costume. He named Bruce Wayne. He figured out Gotham. He created Robin. He created the Joker, Batcave, Batmobile. All these things came from Bill Finger, but Bob Kane was the guy who went to DC, got the contract, and
Oh,
never told anyone about Bill Finger.
oh, wow. I
And
didn't
so,
know that.
yeah, so there's a fascinating documentary on Hulu that talks about this. And so in this Mark Nobleman actually wrote a book about it, and there is a documentary talking about trying to have Bill Finger get the rights of this. And just past 3 or 4 years, actually, Warner Brothers in DC, and now then instead of Batman created by Bob Kane, it's Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger.
Oh,
So
interesting.
he's gotten credit. So it's a hero. So success has many parents. So I'm fascinated by this story of what did she do to help? And in her mind, she thinks it's more important than it was, maybe, but that doesn't mean she actually didn't do part of this.
Right.
So, talk to me a little bit where you got this idea.
Yeah. So initially, I just really wanted to write about that time and place. I wanted to write about the late 70s in New York, Studio 54, the punk scene at CBGB's in Max's Kansas City, all of that. And I had an idea of the three main characters who were in the book, including the narrator, but I wasn't sure at first that she would be the one telling the story. Like I didn't set out to write an unreliable narrative,
Hmm.
but I just tried it from different perspectives. And when I tried it from her perspective, it was really different and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's going to be hard, but this is the one. This is how I have to
Hmm.
tell this story. And so it, I think you make some really interesting points because she did do some things that helped the careers of
Yeah.
the maybe not so much the younger character Aura, but certainly Johnny. She definitely introduced him to some people. She helped him perform at Studio 54. She introduced the two of them, Johnny and Aura.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's definitely true that she did something, but I would say that she exaggerates in her mind her own importance. And she also, without giving anything away, she did some things at the very end of their acquaintance that I think for both Johnny and Aura negated any good she might have done.
Yeah.
And rightly, she's a little dangerous when she feels like she's been wronged. So it's nothing too disturbing, but like she can be a bit of a stalker if things don't go her way, and she does some things that you would not want to see a person do in your real life.
Yeah, as I said, I've just started the book, and first off, I would be her friend that it's a school night. Why are we staying out to 3 a.m. dancing? I've got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
But there's a scene right where she winks at the guy, the bouncer, and she talks about and giving him a hey, and later I'm going to take care of you sexually. And there is this raw to the character that she is very almost stereotypical New York Jersey that it's almost like you've played into that caricature of it.
I think the fact that she's from New Jersey is very important because she wants to be a New Yorker, really. She one of the best blurbs that I got on this book was from the writer Tom Perrotta, who wrote Election and Tracy Flick Can't Win, and he's written a lot of really hilarious books. And he described my character Linda as having a Jersey-sized chip on her shoulder. And Tom Perrotta
Oh,
is also from New Jersey.
I
Um,
love that.
and it's perfect because she, but I also think it's part of what maybe softens her a little bit in the eyes of the reader because I didn't want to make her so unlikable that the reader wouldn't be engaged or wouldn't want to root for her. I think I created a tension with you're reading it like, oh my God, what's she going to do next? But you also, hopefully, the reader just can't wait to turn the page to find out what she's going to do next. But I think that she comes across a little bit sympathetically to the reader because she feels less than. She grew up working class in New Jersey. She thinks she deserves to be much grander than she is. And she is determined to do whatever she thinks it will take to get her in her proper station. She never accomplishes it. She never really gets what she wants in the end.
And one of the things that I've liked so far is you one, I do like her. I like
Good.
her a lot. I think she's funny. She recognizes Aria. Is that how you say that her name?
Aura.
Aura.
Aura. Yeah.
She recognizes Aura's talent because the first time, and I won't spoil this, right, but there's an assignment. Everyone has to write a poem, and it sounds like, oh, you didn't do the assignment, but then after you explore it, no, you actually blew the assignment away. And so she's recognizes the talent and she does have this confidence. But one of the things I like, and I don't know if this was deliberate, but as she's telling the story, she's also talking about her current life
Yeah.
where she did find someone to be married to. She does have a life, you know?
Good.
And so my question is not to ask you the question, but as I'm reading this, would she never get would she not recognize that she actually won without winning? Because having a good life, having someone who cares about you, making a good life together, Better Days is one of my favorite Bruce songs, where he
Yeah.
talks about, right? I'm waiting for my life to begin while it's all just slipping away.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a question there, but please comment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I'll backtrack a little bit here. I have
Yeah.
a friend who's a clinical psychologist who read the book, and she said that one of the things that she appreciated was that the character does end up maybe not where she wants to be, but she has someone who loves her. And often, when narcissists are written in literature, the author feels like they have to punish them and they end up in terrible circumstances. And the truth is, I don't think Linda is a good person in a lot of ways, but I do like her. I have empathy for her because I think she's a really exaggerated version of lots of real people.
Yeah.
I think lots of people have little bits of Linda in them. Fortunately, most people have other sides to their personality that kind of temper it out. And she just doesn't. She doesn't have a filter. She is determined to be famous. She hasn't completely given up on the idea of being famous, even though that all happened decades ago. And it will become pretty clear to you as the novel goes along. And I think it's said pretty early on that she can't disclose her location right now.
Yes, she did that.
Um,
Yes.
and you'll find out more about that as the book goes on.
Yeah,
But
I was curious about that. That was a really nice tidbit. Is she in witness protection or you're like, what's going on? So yes, I like that.
you will
Yeah.
definitely find that out. But I think that on the one hand, I think she is not thrilled with everything about her life, but I don't know if she's quite capable of love in the way her husband is, but I do think she appreciates him. And I do think she recognizes that she has a good thing with him. And so that you could argue maybe she's not a full-blown narcissist if she can
Yeah.
recognize that. The one thing I didn't want was to make her like a textbook example of some psychological issues. So she has some narcissistic tendencies, she has selfishness, she has grandiosity. I don't know if she would fit the clinical definition of a narcissist, and I didn't really care if she did.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be that character that is always complaining because the house isn't big enough, the car isn't big enough. She's looking or he is chasing the Joneses. And to have that, and I always find it interesting, where do you draw the line between ambition and when you're now, okay, you now are hurting yourself because you keep trying to, like everyone says, go for your dreams, right? Never stop believing. You can do anything you want if you believe strong enough and not far enough. But sometimes you reach the point where, hey, I'm actually hurting myself now by keep pursuing this same goal.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that it so far she does not seem to be that the guy or the gal that's a shrew that's always complaining that it's not good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say she's more a schemer than a complainer. She's always trying to find an angle on things, and she's always trying to come up with a little scheme that will maybe bring her closer to what she wants, or at least make her life more interesting. But yeah, I think that I don't really see her as a complainer per se.
Okay.
I think she's
So,
just always got a scheme.
yeah. So, what surprised you about writing the book?
I think the first thing was the fact that I was writing this unreliable narrative, because that was not initially what I set out to do. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, maybe for context, what was your first couple of novels? What kind of music? What kind of books?
Yeah, so it's interesting. All of my books have music in them. My first novel, Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is also the title of a much more famous novel by Anthony Derr, but mine came out first.
Okay. Thank you.
It is basically about a folk rock duo in the 80s. It's set in the 80s. And my the book came out in 2002, but my joke about it, which was true, was that I had started writing it in the 80s, so it wasn't a historical novel when I started writing it, but it took me so long to finish it and get it published that it eventually became a historical novel.
That's pretty funny.
So that book was overtly about musicians. My second novel, The 51st State, is set in South Jersey, and it's about a brother and sister who come together after a family tragedy. So it does have music in it, and there actually is a rock star character because I just can't seem to get away from having that in my books
Hmm.
since I'm pretty music obsessed. But it's music is a smaller part of that book. It's just that the one character had dated this guy who later became famous, and her younger brother worships him, and that's a way that they find to connect. So he works in that book. But last night at the disco, I think the thing, when you talk about what surprised me, here's a thing that really surprised me. So you probably remember very well the disco versus rock wars
Sure.
in the late 70s. And there's been lots written about it in the years since that this whole anti-disco, disco sucks movement was really started by racist, homophobic DJs in the Midwest who were worried about the future of like white rock and roll and were trying to denigrate disco music. But as a kid, I liked rock music and I thought I had to choose sides. So the side I chose was rock. And I didn't really listen to much disco. I didn't give it a fair listen. When I started listening to disco for this book, I realized it is great. There
Yes.
were some amazing songs, and I'm just so embarrassed that as a kid, I just completely wrote off an entire genre of music because some DJ told me to.
That's
Uh,
funny.
but it's been a wonderful thing to figure out that there's just so many, and I think there were a few songs that I knew I secretly liked even back then, but it's just amazing. I put together these really fun playlists, and this is the music that my narrator loves because it's fun, it's lively, you can dance to it. It's not every song doesn't have to be poetry like Springsteen. Sometimes you just want a good beat.
Yeah. And why do you think you you like to talk about why do you think you like to include musicians in your stories?
Oh, there's probably a part of me that wishes I had become a musician, or I think that's my frustrated dream that I never pursued, mainly because I don't really think I had a whole lot. I half-heartedly tried to learn guitar when I was a teenager, and it didn't come very easily to me, and I abandoned. I think I don't know, I couldn't get past my own embarrassment, I think. And it's weird because I didn't feel like that about writing.
Hmm.
I was willing to keep doing it and keep working at it until it got good. I knew some of the stuff I wrote as a teenager wasn't good. I was well
Hmm.
aware of it, but I just didn't have the same level of embarrassment. I don't know why, but with music, I was embarrassed to not be good at it. And I think, I don't know, maybe I just felt innately that I had more likelihood of becoming a decent writer than a decent musician. Maybe I was wrong about that. I don't know. I do think that there is a part of me that thinks that music and writing and books are both really neck and neck for me in terms of what I love. And sometimes I think I love music a little more, which sounds crazy for a writer. But I think that's why there's always music in my books, because that's really what I'm obsessed with.
Okay. Do so what I guess what talk through the story of you're a little surprised you're talking about this, you're going through this. So talk through the process of once you started building your character, talk about it, where you went and from there, I
Yeah.
guess the role of getting published and doing this.
Yeah. So I had a wonderful agent at the time who unfortunately passed away last April, which has been sad in many ways, but he was such a champion of this book, and it kills me that he won't get to see it come out.
Yeah.
But When I first started writing this character, it was a real departure for me. My first two books are pretty earnest voices. And I sent him 50 pages and I said, "Is this any good? Should I pursue this?" And he loved it. And he was like, "I want you to go all out. Don't be afraid of it. Like,
Yeah.
really into the unreliability. Don't shy away from it." And it was great to get advice like that from someone I trusted and admired so much, because I think it allowed me to go places with the character that I might have been afraid to go.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, there was a time that I think I made her a little more unlikable. Like I really went, like he said, I leaned hard into it. And then I pulled back a bit. Once I got it all out on the page, I went through and I thought about some of her reactions to things. And there were times that I just thought it wasn't consistent, because she's such a self-interested character. She's not someone who would be cruel just for cruelty's sake.
Okay.
She would only be cruel if she thinks it serves her in a certain way. So
Okay.
she actually doesn't like bullies because she thinks that they're stupid and just cruel for no reason. However, she can be cruel to people if she thinks they deserve it. And that's something you can certainly judge her for. But it was after I went really had a draft where she was really mean to everybody, I was able to look at who she actually was and say, okay, she wouldn't do this. But she would do this. And then I could go through and take out some of the places where I had her overreacting to things and I thought it wasn't consistent with her personality. But then other things, like when she was slighted, even if it's a tiny slight, she would really go in for the jugular because she
Yeah.
just can't take any slight. So that was actually, I think once I figured, that was probably like the third draft, maybe, when I really felt like I had a handle on who she was. And then after that, I just had a lot of drafts where I was trying to elevate the voice. So I would use little snippets of poetry that she would have read, or things that she has a lot of grandiosity. So I would work some of that into her language. And it was really just going over and over it and looking for places where I could add some of these little tidbits to just get her voice over the top in a fun way. That was my goal as I continue to revise it. But it went through a lot of drafts as I did that.
And so the name of the book is Last Night at the Disco. Remind me, when is it going to be out?
It will be out October 7th.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What any current have you gotten? What kind of feedback have you gotten pre-publishing?
Publishers Weekly gave it a great review, which made me super happy. They really got the book deeply. Like it was just one of those reviews that you dream about.
Yeah.
They called it a tragicomic romp, which I think actually describes it pretty well. So I was delighted with that. So far, I've actually been I was concerned that not a lot of readers, but that a number of readers would just be turned off by the character. And I have been really pleasantly surprised at how positive the feedback has been. Feedback on Goodreads, which often Goodreads is just strangers reading your book, and
Yeah.
sometimes that can really go south. But a lot of people on Goodreads have, even though they've said, I wouldn't want to know this person in real life, but I really enjoyed reading about her. And so I've been really just so happy with that people really seem to get what I was trying to do with the book, and it makes me feel like it succeeded. So that's been a thrill.
Yeah. So what's next for you? What do you want to do next?
So I have a very tentative beginning of a next novel. It's in this state where it's very delicate, so I generally,
Yeah.
when a book is really embryonic, I don't like to talk too much about
Sure.
it.
No, I get that.
But it will also be humorous, probably a little bit darker humor than Last Night at the Disco. I've referred to it as a dark comedy, but it's not super dark. I think this book would be a little bit darker. And it does have to do with grifters and cultishness.
Mm.
And this will probably be the first book I've ever written that is set outside of, no, my first book was partly set outside of New Jersey, but Last Night at the Disco and The 51st State were both very strongly set in New Jersey.
Hmm.
And this will be the first one I've written that's set in Massachusetts. And I've lived up here since 1995, so it's about time.
Why do you think you like to throw humor in as you're writing?
I think that I always was drawn to humor. Even my first two books, which are fairly serious, have a fair amount of humor in them. I think that's how I've always coped with the world. And
Okay.
it really wasn't until about, I guess, maybe 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, I tried to write a satire piece for McSweeney's. I loved reading McSweeney's. I thought about it for a long time. And I was like, you know what? It was like right after Trump got elected, and I was like, I don't care. I'm going to just try to write something and I'm going to send it in, and I don't care because the world's a mess.
Yeah.
And I sent it in and they accepted it. And I was shocked because I knew how hard it was to get published there. And it really opened up this world for me that like I could actually write humor. And as I continued to write things for them, I met other humor writers and I discovered this whole other genre of writing that is just a wonderful counterpoint to novel writing because I can write a draft of a McSweeney's piece in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas a novel, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to have something that I can finish in a really short period of time and be able to send out and share with people while I'm working on a longer project. But at this point, I enjoy writing humor so much that I will be surprised if I ever write a novel that isn't at least somewhat humorous. It's just so much more fun.
And so that was my next question. What haven't you done that you want to do though, that you haven't itched to do?
That's interesting. I might write a nonfiction book at some point. I am not sure if I will do that or not, but I have written some personal essays and I have a half-baked idea for it wouldn't really be a memoir of my life, but the family story. I don't know. Like I said, it's a half-baked idea, but
Okay.
I think probably for things that I haven't pursued a lot, it would be more writing nonfiction.
Okay.
Because I think at this point, I don't know, I'm probably not going to join a rock band since at this age, but who knows?
Yeah, I could, yeah, you could pull up the guitar, start working on it.
Stranger things have happened.
That's right. I think about that sometimes too, when they'll have that on social media. If you could go back to when you were 15, what would you tell them? And I said, learn the guitar, listen to more Springsteen,
Yep.
and lose some weight. So I was the fat kid my whole life.
Oh,
Um,
I can relate to that too.
yes.
Yeah.
So Lisa, what should I have asked you that I haven't?
Oh, it's a good question. What should you have asked me? Actually, to veer back to Springsteen a little bit, which is
Yes.
probably apt, I do have a little story. I actually got to meet Clarence once, which,
Oh, thank you.
um,
Yes.
so my brother, who I mentioned, used to do lighting for rock bands when he was younger. He actually toured with The Who. He dropped out of college to tour with The Who, much to our parents' dismay.
I imagine.
Yeah. And then later, when I was college age, he was doing a lot of videotaping of bands at the Jersey Shore. And there was one New Year's Eve. So Clarence Clemons had a club, I think it was in Red Bank at the time.
Okay.
And my brother had been hired to tape their whole New Year's Eve show. So he said to me, I don't know what you're doing for New Year's Eve, but if you want to come, you can meet Clarence and see the show. And it was amazing. I got to shake his hand. I got to tell him how much his music meant to me. And he was just a great guy. It was just so odd. It was just, I'm sure for him, it would be something he would never remember, but it was just such a special little moment for me.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Is there we are there favorite songs and albums of Bruce's that you go to on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I'm not one of the kinds of people that you talked about earlier who thinks only the old stuff is good. But I
Yeah.
will say that the first four albums are my favorites.
Nothing
Um,
wrong with that. Yeah.
Born to Run is probably the one I listen to the most. I have been known at parties when I was younger to say things like Thunder Road is the greatest song ever written in the history of rock music. I I certainly think it's one of maybe the top 20 or 30. I don't know if I would say it's the one because it probably depends on my mood, but it's certainly up there in what I consider like some of the best songs ever written. But he has quite a few songs that could also be up there.
I
Um,
remember there were two sports guys on the radio, and someone said Born to Run's the greatest song ever written. And the guy says, I think Thunder Road might want to have a word with you about that. Yes, it
I do
is.
I do really I'll tell you, every song on that album is so good.
Yeah.
It's Born to Run is a great song. I think a lot of times people who are super fans don't want to say Born to Run is their favorite song because it was so popular and so well
Yeah.
known, but there's something so thrilling to me when the drums start up at the very beginning of Born to Run. I just get a little jolt of electricity. So definitely the early stuff is my favorite, but I think that's a theme with me. I'm also a huge REM fan. And it's the same with them. Like I'm a huge fan of like mostly their IRS years. I don't know if you're an REM fan,
No.
but their first, I think it's maybe 6 or 7 albums were on IRS Records, which was a smaller label. And then they got the big deal with Warner Brothers. And the music did change a bit then. It was still good. There's a lot of stuff from the later years that I love. But like with Springsteen, it was like those first few albums that I discovered in the very beginning that just really still speak to me. So
Mm.
I think I have a tendency to do that with artists.
Yeah. I there is a podcast called the Strong Songs Podcast, and he's a musician and he breaks down songs. And so I just gave you the link in this. He broke down Thunder Road and
Oh,
he goes
wow.
through the lyrics and the music and what they're doing. And I sent him an email saying, I thought I loved Born to Run. I love it even more after you explained to me what they're doing musically.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be at a symposium a couple weeks ago in Jersey celebrating the 50th anniversary of the album. And Bruce said, I stole the beginning, the drums from Little Eva's Locomotion. And sure enough, I'll be damned, Lisa, if you play Locomotion from the Little Eva, yeah, there it
Wow.
is. There it is. So
I'm
yeah.
gonna have to listen to that. I know the song, I just never put it
Yeah.
together.
I
Yeah.
never did either. Yeah, I just think there's no shame in knowing that. Yeah, there is, and I find great comfort in knowing that he turned 76 just yesterday, that he's still pushing new things and creating things. Do you have any Pat Conroy stories?
Pat Conroy.
Yes.
So I only met him once briefly. He
Okay.
judged a
Well, I
contest
noticed
for,
that it was
yeah.
on your blurb, so that's why I didn't know.
Yeah, so my first novel, I didn't have an agent for. It was published as the result of winning a contest, and Pat Conroy was the judge of the contest.
Okay.
I think he got like the finalists. I think somebody else chose the finalists and
Yeah.
then he selected. So I met him at, I think it was the Southeastern Booksellers Association conference. And he was a really friendly, larger than life kind of guy. But I didn't really get to spend too much time with
Okay.
him, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I got to meet him.
Yeah, I love his novels. So, yeah, and
Fantastic.
so I just didn't know if you had any stories about that.
I wish I did.
Yeah, any final thoughts? Think about this. I'm going to ask you for final thoughts and how to reach you after I ask you the Mary question.
Okay.
For everyone, if this is your first time with the podcast because you're a Lisa fan, thank you for listening. She has made you guys all very proud. The Jay Armstrong was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. And when he was teaching, he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they would Read it as if it was a poem discussing the imagery and themes Bruce explores compared to other American authors like Robert Frost. And at the end of the class, he would ask his students, does Mary get in the car? So, Lisa, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road, which some would argue is the greatest rock song of all time?
Yes. And first of all, I love the backstory on the question because I didn't know where it came from. But I put a lot of thought into this and several repeat listenings. And it was actually something I had thought about over the years anyway. I think she does get in the car, but I don't know if she plans on staying with him. I think she sees him as her ticket out of this nowheresville town. And I think that she probably could never get past being told you ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. As I think many women would not be able to get past that.
Yes.
Although that's a line that I've heard some people interpret it very differently. It always hit me as a believably sour note. It's one of the things
Yeah.
that's great about the song because it casts the singer as not the perfect romantic
Right.
guy that you want to run off with. It makes him seem very real and flawed.
Yeah.
But I think that Mary probably had a little trouble with that line and said, you know what? I got to get out of this town. I'll go with him and then I'll see what's out there.
I love that answer. I've had a couple other people say that she gets in the car and the first time he stops to get cigarettes, she leaves. Yes, I always say this, and I apologize, listeners, they hear this all the time because my wife is the same thing. He calls her ugly. Of course, she doesn't get in the car. I think of it as, and this is my mental gymnastics, is I feel like Mary often puts herself down. Oh, I'm not very pretty. Oh, I'm not very smart. Who would want to go with me? I'm just this poor kid from Jersey. And that he is pitching in the same way a salesperson brings up the objection before the client can and then puts it aside. That's my version of why he does that. And
It,
then says, and I'm no hero. That's understood. Other words.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you should say that because I was talking to my partner Jeff about this earlier, and he said something very similar to what you just said. He
Yeah.
said that's his game. That's actually like how he's trying to win her
Yeah.
by putting her down a little bit, but then putting himself down. And I
Yeah.
was like, boy, that wouldn't work on me.
Yeah. So I just had a writer on, and I haven't even released the episode yet. And she, same thing as you. I don't tell the context of it. I just give the homework assignment to the people
Yeah.
who are going to come. And once I gave her the background, she says, "Oh, I'm so happy." She goes, "Because I have gotten all academic on this." And I was just like, this is not what he wants. But she ended up thinking that the narrator is death and that Mary is being reached, that of course she gets in the car because all of us have to go to death. And I was really impressed. That's a great thought on that. So
That's
y-
interesting.
yeah, I have
Well,
had a
because there
couple.
were ghosts in the eyes of all the boys she sent away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought that was great. Thank you. This was so much fun.
Oh, it's
Um,
great.
Last Night at the Disco, Lisa Borders, October 7th, available wherever you can find books. Go to Amazon, pre-order it. Go to Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your book, pre-order it. Pre-orders mean so much.
Absolutely.
Once you get it, give some good reviews everywhere you got it. I will tell you, as someone who is thrilled every time someone leaves a review for me on wherever platform you get, I know you must feel the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always
Yes.
just hugely appreciate it.
Yes. All right. Final thoughts, Lisa, and how can people reach you?
People can reach me on social media. I am on Instagram and Threads at Lisa K Borders, middle initial K. And I am on Facebook and Blue Sky as just Lisa Borders. And I'm trying to think if I have some other. There was one question that I didn't get to answer
Okay.
that I wanted to. You asked about a song I would hope to hear live sometime.
Yes.
And my answer is a little silly, but I love Bruce's version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town so much.
Okay.
And I have just never been able to time a show where he would have sung it. And there's this old grainy video you can find on YouTube of a show in Hoboken in like 1978
Yeah.
that I watch every Christmas, and it's like they have fake snow coming down and Clarence doing the ho ho. And I just would love to see that live someday.
I love that. I, that is a great answer because I had someone a couple years ago said they were tired of hearing Born to Run live, that they
Hmm.
would like him not to do Born to Run and put in a different song. And I said, yes, but how many people are showing up at their first Bruce Springsteen concert and are going to be crushed that he didn't do Born to Run?
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 10 years, and it is fascinating the songs that some people take for granted that someone else is chasing.
Yeah.
Like I would not have picked if you'd given me like 50 guesses, I would not have picked Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Yeah.
And that's just awesome. I appreciate that.
He does a whole different, I think at least up here you hear it so much now at the holidays that
Sure.
it's become almost the accepted version, but he did a whole different arrangement of it.
Yeah.
It's just really, there's so much joy in it. I think that's what I really love about it.
When I first heard it in the early 80s, because that was when I first heard it, I remember being struck by it. It's a perfect version. It's a Christmas song done. Bruce Springsteen would do a Christmas song. It was just like blew my mind away.
Yeah,
So,
it's delightful. The video is so much fun to watch because when Clarence does the ho-hos, I think they hadn't planned on it, and
yeah,
Bruce is clutching his stomach laughing.
yeah,
You can see the love between them. It's just, oh, I love it.
yeah. I do. I agree, and that is a great choice. Lisa, thank you for spending time with me.
Oh,
Good
thank
luck on
you.
the book. Please come back again the next time you have a book to promote, or if you just want to visit. Next time, if you got something fun for McSweeney's, please. I'd love to talk to you again. I am going to finish the book and I am going to post a review. I already know I'm going to love it. So thank you so much. Listeners, Last Night at the Disco, Lisa Borders, available wherever you get your books. Please check it out. Follow her on Instagram and Facebook. Everyone, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
And we're out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. That was wonderful. It was really fun.
Thanks. That means a lot to me. That's good. I do you do as a writer now, do you still read a lot?
I do, yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
also sometimes it's hard to find enough time because I'm also
Sure.
teaching and reading students' work. But yeah, I listen to more audiobooks now than I used to because I can use time in the car to
Yeah.
read. But I do prefer reading it,
Yeah.
physically reading when I can.
Yeah. I just had a lady and the episode just went live. Her book went live yesterday. High Hopes, a memoir. Her name is Annie Abel.
Okay.
And the book starts with she's teaching at a community college in the Philadelphia area. And she tells someone to put up the dictionary. It's a vocabulary test, and they ignore her. And when she asks them again, they take their desk and throw it at her.
Ooh.
And so she says, "That's it, I'm quitting." And you listen to as you read the book, you find out that she's been fighting depression her whole life. And she decides that one way she could, now that I'm not working, how am I not going to get into that feel of depression? And so she makes the decision, which is not everyone can do. I will acknowledge that, but she calls a travel agent and books Australia, 28 days, 8 Bruce Springsteen shows, 5 cities. And the
Wow.
book is that story. Like Wild was about the lady
Yeah,
going through Pacific Highway. This is her finding herself and fighting depression through that.
that is really cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, High Hopes, a memoir. It's really well done. So
Wow, that
cool.
sounds fun.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate
Thank
it. This
you.
I'm going to put this out October 7th. So I
Okay,
will
great.
release it actually on opening day. In fact, let's real quick. Listeners, the book is out today. So October 7th, go pick it up, buy it, go to your local bookstore. If Are you going to be doing any signings? Are you going to be doing any appearances, Lisa?
I am. I'm doing a few in Massachusetts and I'm also doing some in New York and New Jersey. So if you're in the Northeast, you should go to my website and you should be able to find me somewhere
Good.
nearby.
All right. If you do, tell her that you heard about it on Set Listing Bruce, and then that'll make me feel happy. So
Definitely.
thank you, Lisa. All right,
Thank
I'll
you.
insert that in. All right,
Okay.
have a great night, my friend.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
You
Thanks.
too. I appreciate it so much.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.